Tony, that's a long three.
Live.
We are, no, actually, because
Actually, yeah, Doug is here.
spend a lot of time
I have a USB-C converter.
Thank you. Oh yes, I need that. Okay, everyone, if y'all could find your seats, we're going to start here in a couple minutes. Oh yeah, I got to sign in. Go ahead and sign. Member. All right, everybody sign in if they want to. If they don't want to, that's okay. We're good? Okay, awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for coming in, everyone. Let's get this started. Anybody here new? There's a first data meeting, even second data meeting? I don't think it is. Okay, Peter. Okay, what's up, Peter? Yeah. Do you know who we are, where we're from? Okay, cool. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you might have. We'll go ahead and skip this. This is kind of our current exec board. We're going to make a couple changes to this today. As you guys know, Connor put in his resignation for president a little while back, so we'll address that towards the end of the meeting. Let's see. I think everybody knows this. If anybody wants to follow us on social media, I just got back from visiting my friends who's recovering from surgery, and they're like, "Oh, I saw your Blue Sky post about the data meeting," because he's like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I've got to go to the data meeting." So social media does work. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna all come together and approve last meeting's minutes. February? Did I forget to change? My bad.
No.
Okay.
No, this is right.
No, this is February?
Huh?
February 2020?
No.
We didn't have a meeting in March? What do we do in April? We all, it was an action day.
Yeah.
So this is our first meeting since February. Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, we've been a little busy running some elections around. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Anybody? Second? Anybody in favor? Who's in favor? Yeah, cool. Anybody want to deny this? Okay, well, okay, we got one denial, so we will move forward with approving the minutes from our meeting from 3 months ago. All right, so today we've got a few things going on. We're going to recap quickly some of the stuff we covered over the past few months. We're going to have a short presentation from Hexel, and then Mr. David Leininger, interim CEO of DART, is here with us to answer some of our questions and give a short talk as well. So what we do have is we have a set of questions that we've received that we will prioritize. And then from there, as time and energy allows, we can get into other questions or follow-on questions from there. Also, but first things first, we kind of did it, y'all. Yeah, like, I mean, another couple of W's, we'll take it. You know, it's a bummer about Highland Park, but a lot of the big ones, you know, we either helped talk down or outright won the election. In Addison, 70-30. Howard, if you're listening, we won, buddy. You know, great. Yeah, University Park was saved as well. Great work, everyone. If you guys talked about it, if you walked and talked, made social media posts, candidate guides, attended the meetings, everybody put in some effort. So one more round of applause. Great work, guys. Hopefully we won't have to do that again in 6 years. And one more thing, we did want to say thanks to Connor. So we saw why he resigned. He shared it in our Discord. His partner is dealing with cancer. It's stage 1, but it's still serious. So he's going to take some time off from being the president to help take care of that. Now, he has said, both in publicly and to us, that he's going to stick around. So, we're not going to not see Connor. But I think the post as president probably demands a lot of time that he needs to be giving to his family. So why don't you give a round of applause for Connor? We wouldn't be here without him. And he's always, I will say, he's always kind of challenged me to look on the bright side or see the best in people when we're talking about situations. I come from a little bit more cynicism than he does, if you can't tell. And so when we talk about issues, he'd be like, well, maybe it's actually from a better angle. And he's usually been right. So I really appreciate working with Connor on the exec board, and we wouldn't be here without him. And, if you want to say any friendly DMs or just say hi to him next time you see him, please do. Like I said, we really wouldn't be here without Connor, so we appreciate his service. All right, and thank you, Nadine. So a lot of us here were big fans of Nadine. She was very kind to us at Data, and, from our perspective, advocated the writers, I think, pretty decently. So we do have a short thank you. We wanted from her going away party that we wanted to share. Do I just click this, Queen? Yes. Okay, cool. So I'll click this. Do I have to download it? Oh, okay, cool. Sick. Working on it.
Hope you will continue to do because it only get things.
Yep.
The CAC and data, I always said this to you.
And we'll
be where it is about the law. So I hope you will continue to do the lots. Because you only get things. The CAC and data, I always said this to you earlier, but if you all hadn't really come about and created this advocacy organization for the writers, I don't know what I would have done. Because I needed to probably as much as you needed me, right? And what I've said to other people within the CAC and is we do a lot of great work together. And I hope you'll continue to be vigilant because the writers need you and don't will listen to you. Because you are the writers, and so I hope you will continue to fight for Dark the way you have been. You've been so targeted, so focused, so organized, so eloquent, and so, I said this to some of you, all the times that I had to sit at the dais and listen to comment after comment, and I really wanted to jump out of my chair and cheer, but of course I couldn't. So inside, I was having a big party, cheering you guys on. Gosh, Rich, Jeff, thank you for coming.
Awesome. So, yeah, thanks, Nadine. All right. Is there a way to make this full screen?
F11.
Oh, yeah, F11.
Or that.
That works. All right. So, yeah, no, we really appreciate her. And, we have her as a resource, too, even though she moved on. I think it is worth noting, the organization, a few of us sat in on a board on, the public transit, Riders Alliance. There's, some sort of nationwide kind of, not a union, but, a group that brings people like us together. We're kind of on an entirely different level of organization. So you guys should be proud of yourselves. For all the money we don't get paid to do this, we do a great job. And so we got to stay focused. There's some stuff coming up that we'll get into the details of, maybe a little bit in the Q&A, probably but more so next meeting from kind of discussing what we're going to do next. And if we stay focused on that, we've been there before. We'll go again, and I think we'll get some good outcomes. All right, so we're going to get into the guest speakers, and we'll start with Hexel. As you know, kind of as we're coming into this, you know, we've got the guest speakers who are our friends generally, but this isn't the same thing as Data saying this. So Hexel's a cool guy, not the same as Data in this capacity. Just saying for all those listening. Do we have a separate slide deck for Hexel that I want to skip through?
That's okay.
That's okay? Okay, you're just gonna, cool. All right, give it up for Hexel.
Hey, folks. It's so weird to think that this is the first data meeting in a while, because it's not like we haven't been seeing each other and doing stuff. So, but anyways, back to meetings, which means back to mixers. So right after this, as usual, we have our bi-monthly Urbanist mixer. So David, you're welcome to hang around and continue meeting this kind of Urbanist community. After this, we're just going the next block over, Main Street, we're at Frankie's. And for those of you who are in a wheelchair, so Dave, there's an elevator access, but when you get over there, basically just hang with me, and then we'll make sure you get in there. And so that's that. We just came back from the Strong Towns National Gathering, so raise your hand if you went, because I do see a lot of people. Yeah, we have Darren, and I thought you went for some reason, but then I realized you were at a national gathering, just not the same one. But we brought back a lot of really cool knowledge and wisdom, and we got to meet a lot of great people in Fayetteville from the Strong Towns movement nationally. So the last thing I'll mention very quickly is we started this thing called Hyperlocal Conversations. So as you guys know, the mixer is only once every couple months, but what we started doing this year is a neighborhood monthly gathering where we talk about walkability. And so this coming up week, we have our Uptown Oak Lawn, our first Uptown Oak Lawn meeting. So if you live in the Uptown Oak Lawn neighborhood, this is the one for you. We also have our downtown meeting. So this is going to be our third, so we've been doing the downtown pretty consistently. Later on, I think the first week of June, we have our Cedars, Hyperlocal Conversation, Midtown, and Far North Dallas coming up. And so those are the neighborhoods that we're currently operating in or having hyperlocal conversation in. If you live in a neighborhood outside of that, but you'd like to see it come to your neighborhood, sorry, I'll let them finish that.
And above all, the interpersonal skills necessary for smooth, clear, and efficient communication, regardless of the medium. Once again, join us at 2 o'clock for our workplace communication skills program at the 6th floor. Thank you.
So if you want to check out any of those, we have all of the dates listed on our calendar, as well as up on our meetup page. And if you live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a hyperlocal conversation started, but you want to help facilitate that, we're always looking for more people to help lead these hyperlocal conversations, including the ones that we've already started. So if you do live in downtown, midtown, Far North Dallas, Cedars, or Uptown, and you want to volunteer and facilitate a meeting, you don't have to come in and have a huge lesson plan or anything. If you're just really good if you're good or at least decent at kind of running a meeting, just keeping the agenda moving along, then basically anybody can help lead a conversation. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll be here and I'll be at the mixer, of course. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Awesome. It is good to be getting back into like a regular rhythm a little bit. All right, so next I want to introduce David Leininger. He's the interim president CEO of DART, taking over for Nadine after she left. He's very kindly offered to say some words and answer some of our questions today. He did say he's prepared to talk about the GMP, so we're going to get into some good policy stuff. So let's give him a round of applause and welcome him in. So we've got couple extra slides with just some context. I think it's just repost of DART slides. So if you want to flip through them, yeah, it's just stuff like that. Those are Patrick's. Okay, he saved them for you.
Okay.
But it's all yours.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's a lot of fun being here, and thank you, first of all, for all the work you've done. I knew I was watching you from a little bit of afar over the last year, and you've really made a great contribution to the effort here. I was particularly pleased in your little presentation here to see your tribute to Nadine. Nadine and I, actually I'm really interim CEO 2.0, because I did this once before, and actually helped onboard Nadine when she arrived back in '21. So she's a colleague of mine, a professional colleague, and also a friend. It's difficult when CEOs and boards part ways, and sadly, it's never very well done. So I would just tell you that from my perspective, she's just a really talented transit executive. She'll find her place in another circumstance of her choosing and continue to make great contributions. But you know, when you get on to different song sheets, so to speak, between the CEO and the board, it becomes irreconcilable sometimes, and that's what happened here. So you'll never hear me say anything other than praise for Nadine, so thank you for your recognition. So the other thing I just wanted to alert you to, this is a tech group, so I've got an analog support base and I've got a digital support base here. So for those of you who are offended by analog, remember, you know, I'm old, and so every once in a while I need to rely on this, because not every time does Wi-Fi work, and so sometimes they have to go this direction. On this one, there's some notes that I wanted to make sure I covered, and so I had just kind of knocked them out. I was asked whether or not I had a PowerPoint presentation, and I thought, God, no. You know, we present PowerPoint presentations by the dozens, and you know, 60, 70 slides seems to be some kind of requirement. I remember when I was CFO at DART, which was back at 2009, 2018 timeframe, I would have a 70-slide presentation, but I'd say there's 6 slides here that I'd like to talk about. If you'd like me to talk about the others, just let me know. Never did anyone get to the others. You know, they were said, because you know, you all have put together presentations. You know, there are certain specific things you want to make sure you highlight. I see Dwight Burns back there, our treasurer. So Dwight, what's my question to you?
Yes, sir. You want to know what the 10-year treasury is?
That's correct. That's every day. Every day. I'm pleased to be here. As I say, I have a lot of regard for what you all do. There's a few different things that I want to touch on that I should. Obviously, you've been talking a little bit about the pullout election and the consequences of that. We'll talk about that a little bit. I want to make sure that you hear some comments about what Chair Bryant's focus is. He has 3 or 4 particular things that he's really advocating. I think so. It's always. Oh, okay. There you go. See, well, Brian, I expected you to have that earlier, but you know, that's okay. That's okay. You know, we'll talk on Monday or Tuesday. But there are some specific themes that the chair has identified that he clearly is focused on, and I think you all know. In fact, I'm sure you know that the chair serves 2 years. So in that time frame, they've got to think about what they want to do when they step in, and then they got to think about what they're going to do when they step out. And then what is achievable inside of that 18 to 24 month period of time. And what can be lasting and what's going to be fleeting. So it's always a focus. Now, the chair, as you know, stepped in at a very unusual time, literally a week after he became the chair. He was in the midst of all the pullout announcements by the 6 cities. And safe to say that he single-handedly did a lot to turn the tide and knock that pullout election list down by 3. And big ones, you know, particularly Plano and Irving. I watched that from a distance, and I thought I know all the folks, obviously, and I thought their focus was going to be more on the money side, but in fact, it really was the governance side. And it was really voting control of the board and the voting control of the suburbs versus the city of Dallas. So I'm going to go there for a minute. First of all, I have proof that I'm old. I actually helped move boxes from the old city hall into that new city hall that's no longer a new city hall. So I started, I got out of graduate school in the University of Kansas in what they call the Kusamet team in 1971, and came to the city of Dallas, and I started the city manager's office in the city of Dallas there. And then I was budget director when I left 3 years after that, and went to Garland, and it was basically the CFO, assistant city manager up over there. And when I made that transition, it was the first time I encountered how deeply the suburban staffs resented the city of Dallas staff. And I thought we were good guys. I was from the city of Dallas, so when I came to Garland, I thought, well, gee, they're going to greet me and really appreciate the fact I'm here. That wasn't the way it worked out. But just a quick aside, all the department heads at that time, save except 2 or 3, were colonels, former retired colonels. Army, Navy, Air Force, but all retired colonels. They all come out of World War II, and once they retired, they all showed up in places like Dallas. And it was Corps of Engineers, a lot of Corps of Engineers guys. And so you can imagine critical infrastructure, floodplains, reservoirs, they're big into that. They're also big into ceremony, and they're big into structure. So, so there was a lot of that going on. And so the suburban staffs, in their mind, were second lieutenants. You know, maybe there was a captain out there somewhere, but they kind of view them that way. So my point is, really, in going through this little aside, is that there was this kind of resentment, and what was going on over the next several decades is that the suburban staffs, first of all, the suburban cities themselves were getting quite big. Our suburbs are huge. I mean, if you think about Irving and Plano in particular, Plano is well over 300,000, Garland's 250, 260,000 now. Those are big populations all by themselves. And those staffs were getting better and better over time, more professional, larger, more capable. And so some issues came up. For example, the city of Irving was so unhappy with the city of Dallas, and this was back in the late 50s, early 60s, and it had to do with water. And Dallas had all the water reservoirs, and they'd entered into contracts with the suburbs. But the condition of the contract was one where they being the city of Dallas, could elect not to renew the contract. And Irving at the time said, that's not going to work. We want the opportunity to renew. Dallas wouldn't agree to that. And so they said, okay, we're going to go out and buy our own reservoir. That was in the late 50s. And there's a message, there's a point in all this. I'm not going to bore you too much, a lot of politics. But the point of it was they were so unhappy with City of Dallas that they bought a reservoir, half of a reservoir of North Texas Utility Water District, that they weren't going to be able to draw water from for 50 years. So they were paying water from Dallas, wholesale water rates from Dallas, and also paying the debt service on this reservoir that was under construction that they weren't going to be able to access for 50 years, because by God, they were not going to be under the thumb of the city. Farmers Branch took on the city of Dallas on the same issue, and they decided they had a different solution. They were just going to sue Dallas. And so that's pretty brave. I mean, you're not very big, and that's a real big contract that you... Well, they not only sued, but they won. I can go down the list. There's a little story like that for almost all the cities, and a problem they had with Dallas. So when you really begin to peel back a little bit and say, what's the tension here? What's the animus behind this? This voting control issue between the city of Dallas and the suburbs has been percolating and has been an issue for a long time. Then unfortunately, every once in a while, the city of Dallas representatives were intemperate and said something like, well, after all, we are the 800-pound gorilla. talking about who has voting control. That never plays well unless you're on that 800-pound gorilla side. So it wasn't surprising in a way to me when I finally saw the final outcome that governance turned out to be the big issue. And they really wanted that voting control of the city of Dallas diminished so that the suburbs themselves had the ultimate voting control. The reason it didn't happen earlier was that the 20-year financial plan that DART adopted decades ago was always considered to be the governing document. And the annual budget was really just the first year of the 20-year plan. But it turns out that the financial plan requires a 2/3 vote of the board. The annual budget is by majority. And within the last 5 years, a couple of the Dallas representatives figured out that, yeah, we don't have the votes for the financial plan, but we do have the votes for the annual budget. So, all of this is by way of saying never underestimate animus, derived from jealousies and long-standing feuds that are not necessarily obvious, but there they are, and it helped to explain why are these issues so deep-seated and what is the problem. There's another issue that's associated with that, and I'm going to circle around to it, but I'll get to it right now. No one had thought that Plano and Irving would ever generate the kind of sales tax income from their geographic areas that they do. It was inconceivable 40, 50 years ago that Plano, for example, Plano was barely over 15,000 when I arrived. It was a little larger than that, but it was just not that big, and it grew. It just boomed over that period of time. So to think that Plano could generate $110 million a year from that taxing jurisdiction, no one would have bought into that under any combination of betting format. In Irving, almost the same, not quite, but almost $250 million a year coming out of this whole 960 coming out of 2 cities. So that means that the mix between city of Dallas area, city of Dallas specifically, and the suburbs was changing, and it went from years ago when they started. Of course, Dallas was about 85-90% of all the sales tax contribution, and by now it's 47%. But the services, the riders, the percentage of the riders who are in the Dallas area is 75%, city of Dallas, 75%, and the services that are delivered that it emerges in almost every region. You have something called fiscal equity versus social equity. Social equity is pretty easy. It's where is the need, that's where the service goes. So that's based on income, it's on transit dependency, and some other unique situation like that. And then based on that, you would direct most of the service in that direction if you have that latitude. Fiscal equity says dollar in, dollar out. Now, neither one of those are perfect solutions, and you have to have a balance. Other jurisdictions around the country are much more on the dollar in, dollar out formula than we are. And so, in a lot of city contracted services are basically kind of a dollar in, dollar out thing. What am I putting in, and what am I buying in terms of service? So it was always kind of there that there was going to be this discussion, and it finally rose to a head. And I've heard the arguments both ways on, well, is that the right way to look at it or not? In terms of dollar in, dollar out, and all that. And so, well, from my standpoint, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, it's out there, and there's a group of people for whom fiscal equity is the driving consideration, separate from social equity. And so you have to find a way to reconcile those two. You just have to do it. And that's what a lot of the argument was about. And it got partly solved in the GMP. So let me now jump to the GMP real quickly. First of all, let me answer a question that's come up. After I came in, 2.0 came in, we immediately went out after the pull-out election and talked to the mayors and city managers of the three cities who had pull-out elections. Oddly enough, the friendliest meeting we had was with the mayor and city manager of HP. In fact, the mayor of HP said, this should never happen again. He says, I'm happy to go down to the and testify to the legislature that you do not want another Highland Park. He said, it's not fair for 15 cities in the region to have to carry public transportation for the entire region. There needs to be a broad-based, countywide kind of a revenue structure of some type. So he said, great. You go, Mayor. That's it. But the real focus was to make sure that there was not a slip between the cup and the lip, so to speak, when we transitioned services and they took over the services and we withdrew. So that was, of course, the immediate focus on that. And so fortunately, we didn't have that many paratransit. That was my first priority, make sure that we knew who they were and make sure that they were transitioned over successfully and without great inconvenience to them. But it actually was a fairly cordial conversation. The other two conversations were cordial, but they all asked the same question. Let's see if anyone can guess what the same question was.
Do we get the money?
Do we get GMP? And the answer pretty definitively from the board chair and board members and the other cities who did not elect to pull out is no. You had your opportunity. There were deadlines that were going to be observed. That was part of the motivation, to ask people to withdraw, and you chose not to. So that funding program is no longer available. Is basically, and that was, as one of the mayors said, well, that's disappointing, but it's part of the dialogue. Now what we do have to do, of course, is not, pick up and head back, to DART headquarters. We've got to work with Addison and UP and really address the fact that there were people who voted against staying in, and there were issues that caused some of that to happen, and we really do need to understand what it is. And each city does have different perspectives on what they want. It's amusing to me in a way that on-demand is so much in fashion now, as if DART doesn't offer on-demand. I mean, we actually pretty much started on-demand back in the 2017, 2018 area, and it was really working with Plano, interestingly enough, when Toyota moved in. And Toyota was, of course, located their campus location about 1.5 miles west of the toll road, if you remember up there in the Legacy area, you know where that is. And Plano really wanted to come up with a way to provide a convenient way to move the employees over to where the restaurants were, both on the east side and also on the west side.
So that was the $1 million check.
That's right. Now you're getting into my lines here, Dwight. But they actually did come down, and about the same time there was a paratransit organization that went out of business, went bankrupt, that was serving Sherman down to Allen, and McKinney and a couple others. And the Toyota executive came and approached us and said, is there anything we can do? And said, well, it's going to take about 2 years for them to regroup and figure out a different way to deliver service. So if you would like to put some money into that, we can stand up some service up there. And then they did what? They said, paper check, not a wire, and they didn't tell us it was coming. It just showed up. So fortunately, we didn't reject it. But but the storyline is this: that so we started this. First, we did a circulator, and we quickly saw that circulators they don't work very well, because they're always where they're not supposed to be, and people arrive at different times and sequences and different group sizes. So we went to a contract on demand with a vendor at that time, a different vendor came out of the Midwest, and what we could quickly see in the heat maps, that people were showing up differently than we thought. We were thinking people would show up, do this on-demand request, maybe it'd be 1 to 3 people, but it wasn't like that at all. It was more like 5 or 6. And again, this is 10 to 2 in that time frame, so it's kind of a lunch hour crowd. The other thing that was kind of interesting was a lot of the people were the people who had driven in, and at Toyota, it's first come, first serve in terms of where you park. And those folks who'd driven in and gotten the best parking spots were not about to leave at noon and then lose their spot when they got back, at 1:30. That's a true story. And so it turned out that, behavior was really an interesting pattern to watch. And then we could see the heat map, that everything was moving around. It wasn't, again, and there were just a bunch of restaurants that were opening up on the west side. And we could see, and I recounted the story a little bit earlier today, we could see that when they were moving back and forth, people were choosing different destinations, different times of the week. But it had to do with specials that restaurants were running against each other. And literally the crowd was pretty much, paying attention to what the menus were and what the specials were, and then that's where they were heading on that Thursday. And then Friday was different from that. And we looked at that and said, we can never respond to this kind of demand scenario with fixed route. It takes us 6 months to even adopt a fixed route schedule. And in 6 months, the pattern could have shifted all over the place, all over again. So we said on-demand is the only way to really address that. So that's what started the on-demand. There was something called the FTA sandbox, and we were doing a lot of work with GoPass on the app side. We said, let's see if we can integrate as many things into this as we can, including on-demand, figure it out. So we grew from there. I think it's up to 32 zones now. VIA was doing something about the same time, starting in Arlington. Most of you are familiar with that. VIA is a very aggressive competitor with sharp elbows. They're good at what they do. And so they took advantage, of all the controversy across the cities, and started calling on all the cities who talked about pull-out elections and said, we can be your friend, we can be your solution. And so, they're entitled to do that. And we were sort of in a situation, DART was, where their arms were kind of tied behind their back in a way. But the truth is that GoLink, that's a startling development. It happens a lot. Okay, it wasn't anything I said. Okay. But GoLink is virtually, the underlying platform is every bit as powerful and actually more so in some instances than what VIA's platform is. We've circumscribed the GoLink zones with some rules that probably need to flex a little bit more. And that's part of what's being thought about now. What we did tell the UP folks was, there's no way we're going to let Highland Park on-demand be better than what's going to happen in UP. I mean, that would be outrageous. I mean, first of all, we have the ability to offer on-demand that's every bit, if not better, than what VIA can offer, and they're due. That's the way we respond to the cities that aren't going to get GMP. They're still going to get good service, and we're going to get excellent service. So the storyline and all that is that on-demand, to me, is kind of a fascinating discussion. I'm trying to think of the streaming service, and I think it's Slam or Sleek or something. But there's a commercial where it says the guy's complaining about not having access to some streaming service, and he says, well, Sleek can do that, and he keeps listing all these things, and it can do that. And I kept thinking, that was my reaction to seeing all these on-demand things going on. I said, we can do that. That's not an issue. But we just have to do a better job of making our services, making people aware of our services and what they are and how they work. I've worked around government for a long time. I mean, about 25 years in, 25 years in the private sector. One thing I will say about government, it is quite good at a lot of things, very good in budgeting, a lot of technical systems. What's not very good at, and there's no DNA for it, is sales. There's just no real government's basically a monopoly for most of their services, and so they don't think about, what do you have to do to go chase down and induce people to use you versus them going off with somebody else. So sales is something you have to really work with, and sometimes it's best contracting with people who really do that and let them figure it out. But sales and marketing is a problem. I can tell you right now, and we're always frustrated about this, but the vast majority of people do not know that Silverline is operating. I can guarantee you can go up and down the corridor, go out 2 miles in either direction, do a statistically valid survey, and you'll be surprised at how many people have said, "What is that? Where is it?" Well, that's on us. It's on us to make sure that people do know where it is and how you use it. By the way, who has ridden the Silverline? All right. It would have been a problem if the hands didn't go up on that one. That would have been a problem. Okay, now, when you are coming back from whatever trick you took, and you're in B, how do you go down to ground level? Because B is where,
Oh, terminal B, okay.
okay, terminal B is where we end. That's where the station is, okay. Now, you've landed at let's say C, or D perhaps, and you've got to get over to B. Now, when you get to B, which gate do you go to find an escalator to take you down to the ground level?
Oh, I see. B29.
Yeah, that's right.
I wander until I find my way.
Well, B29 is the right answer.
He's an airline pilot, so he's.
You do that by discovery, probably, not because of wayfinding map available. And for those who are too old, we know that B actually did have another escalator that took you down to ground level closer to gate 41. 41 is actually the closest to where the trains are. So people, unfortunately, who actually have been there a lot and are familiar with the terminal, they go all the way to 40, 41, thinking that that's where you can catch an elevator or an escalator down. They find out, nope, that was wrong. Back to 29. So the point of that is wayfinding is actually something it's an art and you have to work on it. Now I'll be embarrassed to say here's what I did, my mistake, and I thought I knew what I was doing. I knew where the trains were and all that. But the second time I came back from a trip, the trains come in from both TexRail and from the Silverline, but they can use either track. There's 2 tracks. So you don't really know that DART's not always going out on track 1 and TexRail's not always going out on track 2, which in my mind, I thought that was the case. So, and you have to walk to the front of the train. So these trains the engines are facing you. So they look pretty much the same. The sides are red and yellow, so they're quite different if you figure that out. But I did like everybody else. I had my phone. I saw the front train. I walked over thinking it's probably track 1. Got on the train pulls out, and I'm in Grapevine. So I said, okay, somebody else, most people would be smarter than that if they would just pay attention. But
That happens a lot. I think maybe multiple of us have witnessed people do exactly that same story.
well, and part of it is that you really don't know exactly which side the track's going to, the train's going to come in because they have different schedules. So anyway, the point of that's wayfinding. That's the important part of that. But thank you all for riding the Silverline. So the GMP, real quickly on that, I want to talk about Chair Bryan, his agenda. The GMP, first of all, is that's pretty much sorted out. We told you the response to the cities that didn't pull out but didn't sign. The real focus, of course, is now the final dollar allocations. There's $360 million that's calculated to be the amount to be fully distributed through 2031, and it increments up. It starts at about $47 million in FY26, and then it increments up. Of course, the GMP impact is right in front of me. But it starts incrementing up, and by the time you get out to 31, it's about $75 million. So understanding that, it probably should be obvious to say that had there not been this agreement, that money would be available to for services in the DART system. That's not going to be available for operating and capital in the DART system because it's being redistributed back to the participating cities. So there has to be some adjustment. The question is, how much impact is it going to have? And part of the answer is, well, it depends what your assumption is on sales tax increases. What's the percentage increase in sales tax that's going to occur on a annualized basis, so-called CAGR? And if you think it's 2% a year, you have a very different problem if it's 5% a year. If it's 5% a year, there's not going to be much of a challenge. If it's 2 or 3% a year, then there's going to be a deeper challenge in terms of balancing services. So there's number one is that it becomes a blizzard of numbers. The other issue is that when do you start adjusting services and the service mix inside and among the cities to reflect the fact that there are some imbalances? The answer is not next year. The service program next year will be this year's service program, for the obvious reason that you need a year or more of new leadership and a lot more planning to really look at how do you do FY 28, 29, 30. And you need to really see a lot of things get locked in, including the legislative session and the governance structure. If the governance structure then gets set in place, which would be roughly 22-member board, that's going to change the composition. When that occurs, all that is going to make a lot of adjustments in this. But I would tell you that purposely, the plan is not to change services, and if necessary, draw down cash to cover, that 47 million or 50 million in the next year so that you're not affecting anybody's current service levels. That cannot continue, will not continue when you go to 28, 29, 30, because you'll have to be a lot more purposeful thinking about that. But that's kind of the way GMP is going to work out. Who participates? Well, the cities who didn't pull out, and all the cities that signed up. So there's two that obviously won't participate, and there's one that pulled out, so that one won't participate. And then, of course, will there be services in the next year adjusted? No. After that, yes. But we don't know, really. It's too early to speculate how exactly that's going to work. We'll have to see how sales tax work and a number of things. We'll know a lot more about that in a little bit. Let me shift to Chair Bryant. He's really got 3 or 4 major things that he's talking about and reciting regularly, so I feel comfortable. I don't speak for him, but I can speak about what he's saying. One is safety and security. He's very, very focused on safety and security. He wants, it's a hard thing to do, he would like to see an officer on every train in every car. Obviously, we're talking about light rail. And that's a big staffing obligation to undertake. So we're modeling it, seeing what that would mean. But at this point in time, staff is not telling him why we can't do that. We're saying, here's what it'll take to do that. And let's figure out how to do that. So he's got that focus. He also is very focused on closing the platforms and making them basically access control gated, in other words, on every platform, including downtown. And I heard the and I've heard that from DART staff, and what I've had to say is we're going to start with downtown in terms of the analysis. The other ones are fairly simple. I mean, elevated, are the easiest. City Place, another one's pretty easy. And a number of them are pretty straightforward. Downtown's really hard because you have a transit mall, you have public sidewalks that you've got to figure out. But it can be done. It's being done in other cities, and we have to work with the city of Dallas and work through what that would look like and what are we going to achieve. Now, I'm going to really quickly say that the people who oppose gated systems, and there's a lot of reasons for it, they'll say, look, people who want to cheat will just jump over the fence. And that's absolutely true. Now, but there's not a lot of people that jump over the fence, and there's, of course, there's a small group that love to put on videos, and the leaps over the fence, or the backflips over the fence, or whatever those different things are. But that's a very, very small percentage. The whole point of what gating does in the public's mind is convey the message that everybody's paying. That's because an open system, it appears as if you don't have to pay. And there are some people who take advantage of that appearance. Now, well, by the way, I can also tell you, I got ticketed for non-payment. So now, a retiree of DART actually carries a card, and we actually don't get charged. But I was working with Dallas County on a project here recently, and a colleague of mine was with me, and I insisted he ride with me and we take the train. And we were going to catch a train, let's say at 8:30, and there happened to be one that came through, and we were at 8:20. And we said, well, let's hop on that. Okay, now, you all know, of course, that before you board, you are supposed to have purchased your ticket and activated your ticket. Okay, so what had I not done? I hadn't purchased and activated the ticket because, first of all, I was thinking I had my employee pass, but I was going to buy my colleague a pass on GoPass. Right after we stepped on the train, a very good-looking, highly professional fair enforcement officer came in right behind us. Pressed a uniform, ready to go, and it was her first greeting of the day. And she said, give me your ID, sir. And I'm thinking, for what? And she says, well, I'm writing you a ticket. And by the way, I need his ID too, because I had to write him a ticket. So I ultimately was convinced DART that I should not have to pay that $50, but I did have to pay for him. So I have all the experience about what you do right and wrong with these things. But I actually sent a commendation over to her when I got back to DART. She was probably nervous. And said, no, you did your job. You knew what you were supposed to do, and you did it correctly and professionally, and that was the right thing to do. As uncomfortable it was for me. So, gating the system is really a big focus of the chairs. And in talking to the cities and the city managers in the last couple of weeks, I'm seeing that they are all nodding in agreement on that one. There's a lot of support for that. Now, it's a very expensive undertaking. It was looked at, it was 20 years ago. And at that time, we were estimating about $100 million. I'm sure if it was 100 million 20 years ago, it's probably 300 million today. But on the other hand, it's not all physical, and sometimes now there's different methods that can be conceived and introduced, and we'll see. Gary Thomas, he wanted a toll road concept where when you, just like the toll road, you drive through and it just automatically bills you. His idea is that when you step on the train, it automatically bills you. And so we have to somehow embed something, I guess, in everybody's shoulder or something like that. So, but anyway, there's a point, there are a number of ways to think about it. It's an expensive thing to do. But we're not going to start with immediately trying to cut the budget. We're first going to establish what's it going to take physically to do this, and how do you do it downtown, and work with the various cities, but particularly City Dallas and the downtown. Farmers Branch wants to use some of their money on the GMP to gate their station in Farmers Branch. So to give you an example of, different people have different views. Now, I know that you all should know that part of this is a perception of a way to control the homeless, people who shouldn't be on the station, all those sort of things. I should tell you that I'm on the board of an affordable housing project, and we have 3 homeless projects in our portfolio. Now we have, and they're called permanent supportive housing, which really means that we're dealing with homeless populations where they're ready to be housed. That's an entirely different group than homeless who are not ready to be housed. And the problem that you encounter, if there is a problem on platforms and buses and train cars, is really the ones who are not ready yet to be housed. But we know that part of this is about that. in terms of request, and getting, quote, the right, people who have a right to be there, and who've paid their ticket, the right to be there. So there's that emphasis, and that's a priority of the chairs, and he's made it very clear, and he repeats it regularly. Now he's got to get the rest of the board to go along with that idea, and he's got to get some more facts in that, but that's a priority. Obviously, a big priority for him is also the legislative session, because everything that was done in the GMP discussions is pending a successful confirmation in the next legislative session and a validation and a documentation through legislative adjustments, particularly on the governance side and changing the size of the board, the calculation of how you calculate representation, all that sort of stuff. So that means we got to keep the participating cities together between now and then, so that we don't have another fracturing going into the legislative session, where then the legislators turn around and say, you guys can't get your act together, and if you can't get your act together, then there's no reason for us to help you. So that's a big focus of the chairs. Now, beyond that, we all have a focus on something called FIFA. And you probably know a lot about FIFA. You're all data people. But we can only carry, if you understand the numbers really quickly, about 20% of the ridership that's going to the stadium. Maybe 25% depending on attendance in a given day. And that's on the TRE, and that's coming from the two downtowns and coming to Centerport. And then there's a bus system that has to take you from the Centerport then to the designated lot there at the stadium. We can deliver a couple thousand people an hour coming from both sides on the trains there, and then you got the buses got to transfer, and you got to go from there. So there's a lot of cars that are going to be showing up over there in Arlington, and there's a lot of cars that will also be showing up where they're not going into the game or the match. It turns out that FIFA events have a lot of folks who never go inside the event or the auditorium where the field of play is, but rather they just hang around and have a party outside. So Arlington's going to have a lot of cars and pickup trucks and whatever strung around them. It's going to be a real challenge. Our focus clearly is to make sure that we know where those platforms are going to be loaded, what the various scenarios are if a platform somehow gets shut down, if a car gets shut down, all those scenarios that you have to think your way through. Somebody here was talking about riding their bicycle from Arlington to Centerport. Okay, all right, and I heard something like 40 minutes, maybe on a good day? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so a bus should get you there, then what do you think? Okay, yeah, maybe 20, yeah. Well, but, yeah, it'll probably be, I think 20 to 25 minutes is what they're assuming. But but you got a lot of buses that are going to be going back and forth that day. So those 9 match days are going to be a challenge for everybody. And then, of course, we have 5,000 credentialed journalists who are working out of the downtown Dallas area. A great number of them will not ever leave the building. They're actually broadcasting events throughout the world, and they're in there and they'll stay there. But there will be quite a number that will go over to stadium, and they will go over on charter buses directly. So anyway, there's a lot of discussion around that. From DART's standpoint specifically, and working with their agencies, first of all, on the FIFA website, there's going to be a transportation mobility drop-down, and it's going to say buy GoPass. And it's going to be especially designed. They're actually creating another agency for FIFA. So it's like, if you go to GoPass, you have Tulsa, and there's different cities you can select with. So we're going to create another city, essentially another agency, and it's just FIFA, and it's a regional pass only, with one exception. Of course, you always have to have exceptions. The exception is that Fort Worth rented 125 buses, and so they've actually created a coach product that will take you from downtown directly to Arlington on other than match days, and so they're calling it something like the Cowboy Express. Yeah, it's Fort Worth, guys. That's, and it may be the Cowtown Express. I'll have to look at that. But but in any event, on the same item, it will, there'll be a choice that you can buy that. And I think it's $10 one way and $20 round trip. The regional pass is, of course, regional pass, so it's $9 now for a ride anywhere for the entire day. So everybody's saying, well, why wouldn't they just do a regional pass? They're saying, well, our problem is that if we put this on a regular agency site, people may not get to it. So anyway, we can accommodate that. But in addition to, there's some kind of cool graphics, and there'll be a bouncing soccer ball across there. And it is, it's FIFA, it's not going to be baseball. But we're going to do all that. And we're also producing about 65,000 commemorative cards, tap cards, with different, I think there's 8 different scenes on that, so they'll be available at your friendly stores. So there's that, and there's a few other things we're doing. All of our folks will have, who are ambassadors and volunteers who are actively serving, gone through the training, will actually have a FIFA shirt. So you'll know how to recognize who they are and where they are. So there's a lot of work that's gone into that, and FIFA obviously is in everybody's mind, and we certainly want to make sure that we are not the issue. That we, DART, Trinity Metro, DCTA, but particularly Trinity Metro and DART are not the issue. So we've done a lot. Fortunately, of the 21 million that we're going to have to spend for FIFA, about 18 or so of that is being offset by federal grants. So our exposure is relatively modest compared to what it could have been otherwise. So FIFA is obviously, everybody is got to focus on that, and Chair Bryant's going to be very, very interested in that. And of course, he's also going to be very interested in one other thing that's of particular interest to me, and that's selecting the new CEO. That process is underway. They will begin interviewing candidates in mid-June. They've kind of got 2 flavors they want to consider. One that's very, what I call, locally well-versed and relationship stakeholder oriented, and another one being more transportation industry experience oriented. So 2 different kind of views of who can best align with the DART board and who can align then with what the stakeholders want. So that's their aspiration is, and I applaud their aspiration, is to have somebody selected by maybe the end of July, very early August. So that's the game plan. It could, that would be very quick. Actually, normally those search processes take 6 to 9 months, but there apparently is good candidate interest. I am not involved in any of that, any of the search process or any selection process. Now, as for me and some of the focuses that I've got to deal with, obviously, FIFA's an obvious one, but there's a lot of team in that and a lot of work in that. But it's really to be, to stay abreast of what we are doing, and then when a glitch does occur, how we're responding to it. The other obvious thing is budget formation for 27-28 and putting that together. We're presenting a capital budget request actually next week. And it's just the capital. Operating will come in June. There's about not quite 900 million that's in that request, and about there's 262 million of that. The source is going to be a new bond issue. Then there's cash that's from previous years that has been reserved for that. So somebody asked the other day, so how are you paying for that? Because that's well beyond what you're getting in recurring revenue. The recurring revenues is about $1.2 billion, so there's about a $500 million difference in it. And the difference is new debt issue and cash on hand that we're applying to capital. So we don't do structural deficits. We don't do unbalanced budgets. But the way you do that much capital is because you're drawing down on available cash or in grants, or you're issuing debt. So that will be one focus, and as I mentioned, we're trying to keep the services basically intact for this next year, so that really isn't a particular issue. And there's a couple other things to focus on. We have some staff adjustments internally to the agency that I'll address. We've got a lot of interims. I'm only one of many, as it turns out. So I'm trying to lighten the load on a couple of these other interim department heads and adjust some things around a little bit to make it a little bit easier on them as they go through their processes. But part of my obligation is to address a morale issue. And it's kind of understanding there'd be a morale issue when you have 6 of your agencies, or your 13 agencies say, we dislike you so much we want to pull out, or we want to consider pulling out. That's a tough message for the staff, and then you hear it gets pretty one-sided for a while. So morale is a challenge, and it's something that I can partly address. As I talked to the staff last week, I said, the morale is directly linked to trust. And trust is earned. It's not just it's committed to. And you say, "Trust me." Well, that's an interesting message, but then you say, "Why?" Why? So trust is not an easy thing to earn, and it's easy to lose. So it will take a while, but at least we're calming things down, and part of my job is to do exactly that. As I'm thinking about it, there's one other thing I neglected to say about the chair and his initiatives, and that is growth. He said there's absolutely no way we should accept the fact that DART's not going to get bigger and have more agencies coming into DART. Whatever we've done in the past that's made it difficult for other cities to want to join us needs to be changed. We can't sit down and let all this growth go unserved. So we have to figure out how to respond to growth, but the agencies need to go south and north and address the growing populations in the ex-urban areas and figure out a way to be of assistance and add value and bring the right kind of modal mix to them so that they can be served. The modal mix in the outlying areas is going to be different. It's certainly it's going to be a different combination than what you see in the center city, but I would be remiss if I didn't say growth, because it's very much on the list of the several things that the chair is really focused on. Now let me end a couple points. One is there's going to be a real question over the next few years about what exactly is the mission of public transit. And you all are the ideal group to think about that, because it's a very data-centric kind of a question. But the point of the question is whether it's when we talk about regional commuter rail service and what is its purpose, it's a different purpose than local service. What is its purpose? What are we trying to achieve? And there's a very good presentation that was just presented by Paul Christina, who's the CEO up at DCTA, that I'll make sure we get over to you all and so you can look at it. Really thoughtfully done and done in combination with the COG. I think you all know, you're the data geeks among us, that COG does a 2050 forecast. Who doesn't know that among this group? I want to meet that person here. And COG's very good at it. COG's one of the best in the country at what they do on demographic modeling and forecasting. They're really quite good at it. But if you look out to 2050, there's a whole bunch of things that come out of that. One of the things, interestingly enough, I was doing this for Dallas County because they were looking at jail populations and forecasting what they're going to need to build a new jail and all that. But part of it is when you look at ratios of CAGR growth on population and also on employment, the compound annual growth for resident population in Dallas County is relatively modest compared to the other three counties, Tarrant, Denton, and Collin. The compounded annual growth for employees per 1,000 is growing and is quite a lot better and different than the other three counties. Why would that be? Well, you're not going to move DFW. So that's in the center of the region. You're not going to really move Parkland in the whole medical complex. You're not going to move uptown. And even though an ATT leaps out to Plano, that's been going on for decades. That cycle repeats itself. I mean, EDS went out there a long time ago, and then some of the people who went out there came back. JCPenney came in. JCPenney shrunk down. But the point is that the CAGR for Dallas County continues to grow, meaning more employees are going to be coming to and residing in, or concentrating in Dallas County. And we threw this to a couple AI models and fed in the 2050 and said, and we're looking for summarization, and one of the brilliant things that came out of the AI summary was, it appears in 2050 there's a congestion problem. So I said, well, that's helpful. But we actually had been, COG had been doing some modeling of travel times and currently, but also travel times between destination points in 2040, 2050. And you can see the travel times and the wait times get really big when you go out into the 2050, 2060 time frame. I mean, you go from 35 to 45 minutes out to 2 hours. So thus the rationale for a regional rail network that ties together the critical modes and nodes so that you can get people down to a 45-minute ride. So if you can get people into a 45-minute ride as opposed to 2 hours, then you can then obviously migrate, and you can address congestion mitigation pretty convincingly. I'm guessing gas might still be pretty expensive out there as well. But the point is that congestion mitigation is going to be a big rationale for regional commuter rail networks going out the next 5 decades. That will be the selling point. Not paratransit, not local on demand, but it's going to be connecting people on a timely basis to these major job centers and where their homes are, which are increasingly far away. So that's a regional network. Now, another fact that you have to take into account is automobile ownership per household. How many of you have looked at automobile ownership per household over the last 4 decades in Dallas County and Collin County? Okay. There's a young man among us who said he has. The point you'll find is that if you go back to the 50s, that was the beginning of everybody starting to buy cars. They were moving away. Central Expressway opened up. Streetcars lines were getting pulled out. So you went from less than 1 car per household. It was like less than 1/2 of car per household. You drive through some old neighborhoods and see 1-car garages. Lots of 1-car garages. Well, that was the 50s, particularly in the suburbs. So now, as you go through the decade, you can just do it decade by decade, and it's anyways going to 0.7, then it's going to 0.85. Up in Collin County, you're up in the 2s. And the number, this is, the number of cars per household. Well, how many cars per household? Well, the average is 2. And the biggest growth area is between 2 and 3. So what's that really say? If the vast majority, almost 100% of the households, have 2 or more cars, what aren't they? Transit dependent. Except for a subset of them who are unable to drive because they're too young or too old, or some other reason. So transit dependency as just an aggregate statistic is now declining significantly. So transit dependency cannot be the rationale for public transit as its mission. It can be one of the things that it accomplishes to meet, but it can't be the course, because it's very expensive to do it. So you have to say, well, how do you address transit dependency? And it really isn't through a light rail system. Light rail is a very expensive mode. So, and you have to say, light rail is one of those partly regional, partly local modes that you have to think through. It requires a lot of density. So my only point is, and this, all of us should be thinking about this, what is the purpose of public transit in our region, in the counties, over the next 40 years? What purpose are we serving? Because the transit dependency, sprawl, all those things factor in. Growth concentration jobs remaining in the core, residential extending out to the periphery, which is typical kind of a scenario. Also another problem, though, there's a problem, is that the population is actually stabilizing. It actually went down this year in Dallas County, if you read that. So that's another problem that you deal with. But the point is that you really have to look at that and ask, well, what is it? What's the problem we're trying to solve now under these changing sets of circumstances? And I think it's a very good one. And then finally, the question of fair equity, fiscal equity versus social equity continues to be even more on point. And I'll end with going back to on-demand for just a minute. On-demand is something that inside the transit industry is something a lot of people really don't like. It's expensive on a per trip basis compared to if you can get everybody on a bus or a train. But the point is, you got to have a lot of people on the bus or train to get those ratios right. If not, then on-demand really is your only option. Now, what's the problem with being opposed to on-demand in our region? It happens to be the one mode that is growing, particularly. Well, and Uber is growing, and Uber actually proved up the point. But on-demand, if you look at DCTA statistics on their on-demand service, which is exclusively the way they serve Louisville, and if you look at the 32 zones in DART, that service year over year has been increasing, whereas the other modes have actually been flat or decreasing. So what is the wisdom of trying to tamp down on the one area that seems to be in the most demand by our riders? We can't, and the only logic for doing that is saying that there's really a better solution that we're going to offer to you so that you don't have to do that. But if we don't have that better solution, then we really need to recognize that on-demand's the best solution. Now, how many of you are familiar with the argument between coverage and frequency? All right, there you go. Okay, who's in favor of a system that's designed around coverage? Okay, we got one here. Do I hear two? Do I see? Okay, so all of you like frequency. Okay, you realize that means if you buy into frequency argument, you're going to have transit deserts. Many areas where there will be no service of any kind that's available. Okay, the problem with that, from my view, is that all those folks in those transit deserts do pay taxes into the system. And so we're saying, but don't you feel good about the fact that you're helping the people over here who do get service? It's a hard sell. So my only point is that coverage, you have to think through how you balance coverage and how you balance frequency. We all know that it's pretty simple. Better frequency gives you better ridership, provided you're providing the frequency in areas where there actually are potential riders. If you have better frequency in areas where there's really not demand, all you're going to have is empty buses or cars. So you've got to put it in the right place. But frequency coverage is a debate. Fiscal equity against social equity is a debate, and you've got to put those things in balance. But I just would point out that the high demand mode is actually on demand. And so to say we got to squelch it, we got to stop that, is probably not a great idea. Probably have to say, well, how do we work within a way where we make sure we're serving those areas where really that is the best solution and maybe the only solution, without trying to figure out how we ring fence it and make it really as uncomfortable as possible to use, which is not a good solution. I'll leave you with one final thought. Big agencies, and DART's a big agency, tend to get comfortable spending on big projects. They are not very good at handling little projects. So, for example, we have a project in Carrollton, I'm going to pick out Carrollton, for their downtown depot. That downtown depot is 1,500 square feet. It's a wood frame building. It's been empty for years. We moved it. The budget for that is $1.7 million. How many of you live in a house that may be 1,500 square feet? Yeah, a little bigger, yeah, a little bigger. Yeah, so 1,500 square feet will get you 3 bedrooms, maybe 4 if you really have small bedrooms. It's going to have a kitchen, it's going to have some bathrooms, it's going to have maybe a living room area. Okay, so if you were building if you knew that I gave you the charter to go out and build something for 1,500 square feet from scratch, the land's available, no cost there, how much do you think you might be willing to spend? Okay, he says 300,000. Anybody want to go up from that? 350. I hear 350 here. Do I hear 4? So the point is that it's you say, well, what are we doing there? What are we spending money on? And this is all published stuff. So I'm not making any of this up. The soft cost in this project, if it were to go forward in exactly that manner, is $400,000. That all works, those are ratios derived from very big projects. If you're doing a $1 billion project, you're going to have a soft cost percentage allocation, you're going to have a legal allocation, you're going to have a bunch of allocations, and you just drop those percentages in there, and they flow out, and they all make sense, and they're proportionally correct. But on a little bitty project like this, you end up with soft costs becoming almost 40% by the time you add in some other things of a project, and then you realize that I don't think we need a construction manager living on site, for 12 months to do something that's a 6-month project. And this is remodeling a house. And I have to remind staff sometime that your hair needs to be on fire in these things. I'm not trying to take money away from Carrollton. I'm just saying we want to use your money the best way possible. You deserve to get your $1.7 million, but maybe not just in renovating the building. What it's going to become is a police substation. DART's going to have a couple officers there, and there'll be a conference room, and there'll be I'm sure there'll be a coffee, hot pot and some other things. But it's just basically an internal, set of rooms, a couple offices, break room. There'll be a locker area for, officers, that sort of thing. The exterior has to be preserved. It has to be historically correct. It's just wood siding. You don't have to preserve the wood siding. You have to replace it if it's inferior. The wood siding is just like the old wood siding. And it's a composition shingle roof. I'm sure that's historically significant. But the point is that we all have to be alert to making sure that we understand the concept of proportionality. And a little project like that needs to be handled by people who do little projects and do them well. That's for a home builder. That's somebody who does remodeling projects. They bring in an architect, they knock it out, they have 5 trades, and it should be done for about a third of that. But if we're able to do that, that's a little task. I mean, it sounds like, why would I mess with that? It's to make a point. The staff has to make sure that they're looking at these things and applying some tests on this. And so would you do that in your own house? Or if you went out and bought a house, would you spend that kind of money? And the answer is no. You don't have, in the historical significant, it does not cost $1 million to protect somebody in a historically significant way. What you do have to do is you have to use the right paints, you have to be true to the colors, you have to preserve the exterior, you can do acceptable modifications for ADA. None of those things are big ticket items. Sometimes it's a little slow to get them all approved, but that's about it. And my only point going through that is that that's the other thing that DART has to do better. Because those things, all those little projects, in that capital budget, there are 400 existing projects and an additional 100 that are being added. Now, not every one of those big projects is $1 billion. There's a whole lot of these that are in the $2 to $10 million range. And we have to look very carefully at who best does that, who best executes and can do project delivery on those smaller projects. That's one of the cultural shifts that will be a challenge for the agency. We've spent 30 years building a lot of rail. Just delivered our last big rail program in the Silver Line. Now we've got to wind all that extra capacity out, and we've got to thin down, and then we've got to really adjust how we execute and deliver. That's worth a few percentage points. It may be worth $10 to $20 million a year, just in execution savings, probably more. So that's part of the challenge too. I say that, and this is not an indictment of DART, it's an inevitability of going through a large program of work, working with really big contractors and big system houses, and then having to adjust back down to kind of normalizing. So, you know, that's my focus, is to be the grumpy old interim CEO a little bit, and calling out and saying, we don't probably need to do that. We need to protect Carrollton, make sure they get what they want, and then maybe that we get found some money to give them the ability to do a better park or a better plaza adjacent to it, better sidewalks, better access. I'm not saying pull the money back. I'm saying use it tactfully, strategically, in the best possible way. All right, I've talked a lot, and I'm happy to not talk. So,
Yes. Couple of things. First of all, this notion of trying to control and have gates and turnstiles for stations that are at grade, that is never going to work. It is an outrageous waste of money. I know where these complaints are coming from. These complaints are coming from the person up in Plano or something, that the only time they've ever ridden a train was when they went to the state fair. And they looked around and they said, there's the ticket machine, and these people aren't buying their tickets in that ticket machine. They must not be paid. This person does not realize that people have monthly passes, weekly passes that people buy on their phone, you see. And so what they're saying is that you should take a system that was never designed for controlled access and try to make it into something that it cannot be. And as you said yourself, maybe the elevated stations, and maybe the underground stations, yeah, you can maybe make that work, but you never make it work on the level boarding, because all a person has to do is to step down roughly 24 inches onto the track, and they're gonna walk around any kind of a barrier that you have. What's gonna happen when you have a low frequency system like we have now, where the trains are only coming once every half an hour, and they're gonna have people trying to get through the gates that are on walkers or in canes, and there's gonna be a backup. You're gonna have honest people stepping down onto the track just to go around, just because they don't wanna wait another 30 or 45 minutes. So please don't waste money on this. Use the money on improving services.
so I was gonna, I'm messing with you a little bit when I say this. I said, is there a question in there?
Yeah, my question there is gonna be, how could you possibly make something like this work on an at-grade level that
Yeah.
isn't going to inconvenience riders, and make them complete, make them even more frustrated and make the
Yeah.
system less practical and cause you even.
Well, your question and your comment is shared by a lot of people. But the role of the staff is not to start with that. It has to emerge out of a process that people can decide, well, what's achievable and what's not. And it's, it's the board that's really going to have to wrestle with that. I'm completely sympathetic to this. I got a complaint a year ago. I was meeting with some folks out in Irving, and they were at the University of Dallas, and they were concerned about the number of homeless that were using the train to come up on the campus. And so we actually checked with security and said, did that ever happen? And so the answer, well, no one could recall an incident. but there was a fear of that being a possibility. So there's a lot of urban legends and stories where people have a story of a possibility that they're trying to avoid that really hasn't happened. So, but it's our responsibility on the staff side to listen to the question, come back with an answer that doesn't start with, you can't do that, it was a dumb idea. So we have to be thoughtful about what's possible, what's not. Back here?
I guess ask the question in a way that staff can respond to it. What's the current fare box recovery percentage of the budget, and what would be the improvement of the fare box recovery portion of revenue if this fare gating of the trains occurred, and would it be fiscally positive to spend the money putting in the gates so that we could get that improved fare box recovery? Or would it be a scenario like we saw in New York City where they spent $250 million chasing $50 million in fare evasion?
Yeah, in its best year, DART was right at 15% fare box recovery. This is pre-COVID, and they're getting about in total in the high 70 million range. Now it's in the 55 million range, and the fare box recovery is less than 5%. So I guess somebody could argue that, well, there's a delta of $20–30 million a year that maybe you could consider that might be capable of being captured using closed systems. You could also argue that maybe more fare enforcement officers on the train would be as effective if fare box recovery is actually the issue. It used to be when at that 15% level, and that seems to be a practical top, we would actually, the fare enforcement teams would actually, quote, capture a car on a statistically valid basis throughout the system and actually go through 100% review and see who had tickets, who didn't. And we were consistently in actual fare evasion at around 1 or 2%. So, like it has gone up from that. That's certainly the case, but I think it's now coming back down. Question here. No, I'm sorry.
We have a set list of questions.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No,
Well,
that's quite okay. Let's jump back and forth. I want to take a couple questions from online, and then we can go back
Okay.
to the audience, if that's all right. Because some of you guys who ask questions are here, so I'd imagine you're going to ask the same question, or different. So a couple ones I'm seeing here are kind of talking about light rail. Do you have any thoughts on any potential infill stations for light rail, as well as maybe like a favorite TOD idea or ongoing project that you'd want to jump on?
Well, I think a good way to start on TOD is, first of all, finding out what right looks like and go look and find some projects that you really think work well. One of the one most recently is up in Grapevine. That's really been done well. And it has the right mix of uses associated with it. It's got a destination, all that. So one of my points is you need to make sure that you've got a rationale and you put the right mix together. There's a government underwriting this, not a transit underwriting. There's a government underwriting. Usually there's a public element to this at parks or a government use, a library, whatever, that should be introduced. In terms of infill stations, those are always possible. Now, infill stations, are about the same price as the new one, and they're going to run $20 million, something like that, maybe more, depending on what kind of infill location you're talking about. The problem with introducing more stations is that light rail is that thing that's between commuter rail and local bus. And the more you add infill stations, the more you're adding stops, and you're making it less, your travel times are going up. So the only way you can offset that is then to figure out a way to do express trains so that you can have more stops with longer travel times, but then express trains that can then get, bypass the local stops. The system is double tracked, so it can be done. But it would take a reconfiguration. But I don't see that as being near-term likely, personal opinion.
Awesome. Want to ask a couple questions about expansion. So One person asked, do you have any plans for encouraging or incentivizing other cities to join, or how would you go about that? And are there, one other person mentioned McKinney, because I think they heard
Yeah.
Chair Bryant talk about it. Who are you going to go after first, and how?
Well, I am not going to go after anybody, but just to be clear, Chair Bryant has talked about McKinney, and he's talked about the Silver Line extending all the way up as commuter rail, not light rail, not BRT. So that's an aspiration. I think from a money standpoint, the three existing agencies sort of feel like we've already given it the office, so that any expansion is really going to have to be funded by a regional funding platform that's not from the existing agencies. In fact, the existing agencies are looking to get a little bit of money back because part of our particularly our commuter rail, is serving the region, and there really needs to be some equity in that and recovery of some of that cost. So you're not going to be able to bring cities in very easily one by one. So it probably does make sense to talk about countywide solutions, vehicle registration fees, some kind of sales tax overlay on top of what's there now. Banker types really like ubiquitous, non-correlated revenues that are totally unrelated to whether you succeed or fail, and you'll still get paid anyway. But sales tax, vehicle registration fees, those would be two. You could probably do some, ad valorem, but ad valorem is getting beaten up pretty heavily, so that's not very likely.
Okay, let's open it back up.
I think I saw a question here.
Yeah, so you talked about the marketing issue with GoLink and all sorts of things. With the GMP, how is marketing dark services to cities to use their GMP funding going? Because I know when Irving spoke about it, or even when they introduced this new VIA system, they spoke about engagement with DART to bring back certain bus services. Is this something that's been fruitful with cities on talks with GMP, or is it kind of on the back burner?
No, it's actually been pretty fruitful. We've been meeting with each of the, I have been, and Kay Shelton have been meeting with each of the city managers and having a fairly long conversation that we've been documenting, and we've been playing it back to them and said, this is what you said. And it's a long list of things, but the list is different across the cities. And so first and foremost, let's make sure that we are reflecting what you told us about the things you want. Now, and the cities do have thoughts about how they want to use their money. Farmers Branch, for example, has openly said they would like to close their system without getting into the merits. I mean, I'm just saying that's their ask. Irving's got some asks relative to existing routes they'd like to see replaced. They have a circulator that they'd like to talk about in the urban center. That's kind of a figure eight, but it's in the urban. So they have their list of things. Plano has, they've talked about their senior ride that that they'd like to make sure is really restored and utilized in the way that they would like to see it utilized with a citywide zone for senior ride. There's currently 3 zones in Plano, and so it makes it a little difficult when you go cross zone on GoLink. So, so those kinds of things. They would like to see an express bus to the airport on 121. So everybody's got their own list, which is fine. And we're saying at this point in time we're here to listen, not lecture. And we'll put that whole list together. Now that will go into a book that I'm going to, with great enthusiasm, hand over to the new CEO and say, here's what the cities have been telling us, and here's how much of that is actually mapped in already, and here's how much isn't. So that's the way we're responding. I think I saw a question back over here.
I have a question. I agree to have police officers on the trains, please, because it can be dangerous at night. I agree. Yes.
All right, well, I'll pass that back to the chair, and he will be very pleased with your comment, because he agrees with that, and there's a lot to what you're saying. This young lady here in the front, that's you.
I think one of the biggest challenges is getting more people to ride the buses and trains.
Yeah.
And I really like the new advertising hinting the value of DART.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't understand is why DART is not having the media promote the financial aspect. I mean, gas prices are going up, and I hear the predictions, even as everything globally was solved tomorrow, it's gonna be months. or
Yeah.
a year more, but I don't hear any emphasis on that, whereas years and years ago, maybe 10 years ago, it was also a raise in the price of the
Yeah.
fuel, and DART did promote it.
Yeah, there's, actually, that's a discussion that's going on right now. We, on a couple fronts. One is the gas price thing, because there's a tight correlation between gas prices and ridership. As it goes up, ridership goes up, just a tight, it,
No, I've seen it. I saw 5 people board at once in Addison just yesterday.
yeah,
At 3 p.m.
it's starting to happen now. But the other thing is that because I've done this a few times myself, I'm surprised that we haven't already done this, just map out the cost of driving out to DFW and parking a car and staying for 4 days and 4 overnights. And, depending on what you choose to do in terms of covered, uncovered, all that, it's going to be $40 to $80 or more just on parking. And then you've got the drive time. So it's pretty easy to say $3 out, $3 back, $6 total versus, $122. What are you thinking? We should be doing that. And that's an obvious thing we should be doing. I tell you, DCTA is doing a better job of that than we are. They've got a good ad campaign going directly to that point. There's a question back here, all the way to the back.
Yeah, so just getting over like these things real quickly. I just want to ask how more coverage would be a better idea than frequency, because a lot of more urban core centered systems see higher ridership, and the thing with higher frequency routes is that they see higher ridership.
Correct.
Does that reflect the routes getting more useful to society?
Well, that's the whole point of transit. Really, where do you put the service where the highest need is? That goes to that's. But if you end up with transit deserts, then you're saying if that's good, that's fine, that's a good choice. Then you're saying that then it's up to the agency to talk to the people in the transit desert to explain the commitment they're making that's in the better interest of mankind. Coverage is a real thing that you have to have a way to speak to. More frequency in higher density areas is going to generate more ridership. It's just.
I stand into this opinion because according to the discussion previously, people are not aware of the service at all. So they're probably not aware they're in the desert.
And we're going to help them, right?
Yeah.
And they're not noticing where tax money are going at all. So.
All right.
Yeah. I think you had another question. I want to make sure I'm not overlooking.
I'm probably gonna, are you gonna be here after the meeting, because I don't wanna take too much time on that topic specifically?
We're gonna be hanging out after the meeting.
For a while, I have a wife obligation that I need to.
So, quick statement I wanna make, so Metro, St. Louis spent, $1.5 million for at-grade station to implement turnstiles. And so if we wanna implement that here, only on 50 at-grade stations, then, that'll be $1.5 million per station, which is $75 million to implement. And that's a lot of money to implement on one thing, and the other thing with on-demand service, my first concern with it in general is that I'm not able to take my bike, and I bike from Briscoe, where I'm from, and so I've been yelled at by 2 drivers on GoLink to not bring my bike, and even though Go Pass support for me for the wheelchair. And so I stopped taking GoLink because of that issue, and I instead bike down Spring Creek, which is about an hour and 15 away from my house. And GoZen was also implemented into Frisco. There are no student discounts applicable to that through DCTA, and so it cost me over $6 to get to Northern Park and ride. And not only that, but the service is just terrible. So even with that microtransit implemented, I still choose to bike down to the bus stop because fixed route is just much more predictable.
And just a comment. I'm a big fan of something called use cases. And if you start talking about public transit, you have to start really defining use cases. You're a use case. There's a number of people like you, you bike, you have a certain journey pattern that you want to pursue. There's other people whose use case, they're walking out of an apartment building, they're standing and getting on a platform, they're going downtown, going to work. That's, there are lots of use cases, and you really have to look at your service and your modal mix, and say how many of these use cases can we really address? I've always felt that your obligation is, to answer a second question, address and address well. Because if you can't address something well, you're likely to frustrate people every time you offer the service, because they know it's not a great service. So that's the other. But the use cases, I mean, you have a valid use case, and we have to figure out how best to figure out how to address your use case. But you're one of about 60 use cases, so that's the trade-off.
All right, we'll do Dave and jump back to online questions. Go ahead, Dave.
One really significant thing. Has there been any effort on the part of DART to try and get the cities to help with better understanding of the origin and destination needs of the residents for developing potential riders?
That kind of conversation came up in detail, actually, when we talked to the city manager over in Irving. And they are actually spending a lot of time trying to answer that question in Irving. And I think it's the right thing to say is in varying ways, other cities are beginning to understand that question's what is really the one you have to ask is, who are these people and where are they getting on and where are they getting off? And many of them, of course, are not getting on and off in the same city. That's one of the other things that we were talking about this earlier. People don't know where city limits are. They don't know what's Addison, what's Dallas, and so forth. It's not, it's nothing that would tell you that. So, but this question of origin destination, the only discussion where we talked about in depth was Irving so far, and then Poynham. We got into a discussion there. That's one thing I have figured out is that people will assume, for some reason, think that DART doesn't have rider data.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, we got a lot of rider data. From a lot of different inputs. We've got all of our APCs, our automatic passenger counters, they're on the trains and buses. GoPass gives you a ton of information about when things are purchased, when they're activated, who that person is, what zip code they reside in. There's a ton of data that we have in our various databases. We might not be doing a good enough job of really helping people understand what data we have and what we're doing and seeing with that data, and that's on us, and that's a discussion. It's a takeaway I'm figuring out now. I've been amazed in the conversation I've had today where everybody seems to think that we don't actually know much about our riders.
I think DCCA and Trinity Metro have much better ridership reporting that's published than DART does.
Right.
Maybe something you can tackle.
Yeah, quick story. When I got to DART, I came to the hospitality industry. I spent about 15 years in hospitality, hotels and country clubs and resorts. And something you talk about in that business are dailies. What are the dailies? What are the cover counts in the morning, at lunch, at noon, in the afternoon? How many people showed up in the golf course in the morning, in the afternoon? How many people stayed overnight? Lots of daily data. So when I got to DART, I said, so what are the dailies? And they just kind of stared at me and said, what do you mean? I said, well, how many people are getting on in the morning? How many people are getting, where are they going? So, well, we have a monthly report. That's how we can do better than that. So we pull fare boxes every night off of all the buses. We have credit card data at all the platforms, ticket vending machines. We have GoPass. So we know a lot about, on a daily basis, where people are boarding, what routes. So there is a daily document. There's a spreadsheet that's produced every day that shows by bus route, by platform, what our activity count is, and actually it's broken down by quarter segments of the day. And it's compared to the same exact day 1 year prior. And also ask, is it rainy, is it sunny, is it hot or cold? So it's a really elegant spreadsheet. So that data now is there. That's the one thing I'm surprised actually a lot of our own in-house staff don't really look at. And I was told one time when I first joined, I said, well, what's the point of looking at it? We set our fixed route bus schedules, and they're locked in, and it doesn't make any difference who gets on or who gets off. I pull them out in the morning, I pull them back in the afternoon. That's my mandate. It's a, gee, we got to work on that, because that's why we went to fixed route, and we started using heat maps and so forth, because we just weren't really responding. But that data I just talked to you about does exist, and you're right, we're not putting out a lot of stuff. The reluctance, there's a natural reluctance, they want to do it so it's not incorrect. My view is beware the perfect. Just explain that it's raw. Some of it's not statistically valid or sufficiently statistically valid, but it needs to get out there.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and I could imagine people will just move the goalpost too. And there's no ridership data, and then you post it, and, well, it's too low or what have you. So
Too much. I can't understand it.
yeah, exactly. A couple from online. You came back to DART, not once but twice, and it's very evident to us that you know and you care quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about like your favorite part of the job when it comes to being CEO or even your former roles?
The committed bus driver operators.
Yeah.
One thing I learned when we did the GoPass rollout is our best salesmen were our bus operators. They care about what they do, and there's a lot of 30-year, 35-year bus operators out there. But it was really, and they're very proud of the fact that they were seeing some technology that was actually useful, and their customers liked it. So working with the operators to me is, and I've said they're at the tip of the spear. I mean, they're right out there engaging every day, all the time. So I have a lot of high regard for them. I equate the rest of us as just the people on a battleship that's trying to make sure that the planes fly. I mean, our job is to make sure that those people on the front line are getting what they need. But that's the fact that agencies that do these kinds of services, we impact a very large population. So when we make decisions, fare decisions, service decisions, we're impacting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And that's you don't get to do that all the time.
Okay, now a fun one. So a couple of our guys in Hexel and Pascal are both here talking about some of the strategic plans that have been laid out. DART adopted Point B back in 2024 under Nadine, and there's another one, kind of the 10 by 10, 10-minute walk from 10-minute frequency type plans. To what extent are you and future CEOs and boards kind of bound by that? Or do you expect, changes or updates, deviations?
Well, I can't imagine that the board or the CEO is legally bound, because the board can always change and adjust, pretty much on an annual basis. If it's a good plan, then I suspect that they would be endorsed. A lot depends on, again, the flavor of the day from which kind of CEO comes in.
Yeah.
And what their perspective is going to be. Any prudent new person is going to think carefully and look carefully at what happened and what didn't get done that maybe should have gotten done, that got stalled because of, fundamentally some things just stopped in terms of activity while all this poll election was going on. Just, you all know this. All the energy you had to put into, trying to get voters out and that sort of thing. Well, the agency was kind of, in freeze frame there. So some of those will now come back in. I can tell you that in my first month, none of those have come up.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, we're right about at time. So, David, thank you for coming by.
Well, it's my pleasure. You all have the digital version of this, right? The annual plan? All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, make sure that you all have access to that, because everything you ever wanted to know, most of everything, is right here. Okay.
Awesome.
I'm pleased to have the opportunity. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being here.
All right.
Thank you so much, David. If anyone wants to, if you have some time to chat, can we do it outside the room, just so we can finish the rest of our reports? Thank you so much again. One more round of applause. Thank you so much.
Are you the next reporter?
Do not know.
You
No,
are?
it is me,
Okay.
yes.
All right, so we got a couple more reports, just short updates on events and what's been going on at the RTC, and then we're out of here.
Yeah, we'll probably be done in like 15 minutes.
Hopefully less.
Upcoming events, we got a dartboard meeting. Looked at the slides already. Looks like some things about FIFA, board reapportionment since Highland Park is leaving, and other things like that. What else? Is there anything else?
There wasn't really anything.
Oh yeah, there's nothing much really of interest.
There's the Older Americans.
Yes, May 28th, 10 a.m. There's the 2026 Older Americans Month Health Fair and Information Expo. Shared this information just for you guys to know. DART is one of the sponsors of the event, and just if anyone is interested in helping out or volunteering, please reach out. Thank you so much. June 6th is our next Jet Lag the Game. We're playing a different edition called Seekers Edition, where in this case you have to find someone as quick as you can, and that is how the time is determined and not how long you can hide.
Wait, huh? What's the difference?
Yeah, what is it?
So the difference is you're playing, so there's one person hiding, and you have two teams trying to find you. The team that has the shortest amount of time that it takes to find you wins.
So, there's more finders.
Yes,
Okay.
there's more finders than, yeah, there's more seekers than hiders. That might balance out the game just a little bit. And then June 13th, 1:30 p.m., I did update the slides on this, I didn't update on here, is our next general meeting, 1:30 p.m. in this room. We're in this room for the next 4 months, until September.
All right.
Past events, we had so many events this past, it says that this past month, but it's actually the past 2 weeks. When you think about it, all this happened within the last 2 weeks. We have Nadine's going away party, we have the Dallas bike ride, we had Con at the Texas Rail Advocates, and I will invite Chris up just to speak about that, maybe if we have time. And then we have...
We really don't.
We don't? Okay, we don't. Okay, good. And then we have... I don't know how I got this photo, but...
Gary Slagle as a pirate?
No, he was at some other party, like a costume party. He's like a colonial thing. This is at the Addison.
Yeah, it's Colonial Gary at the Addison watch party for the election. So we have that. So a lot happened the past month, and kind of happy a lot did happen. Okay, gonna move to policy research.
Okay, I'll go through this quick.
All right, so elections are not over. May 26th is the primary runoff. Check your sample ballots. If you're in Dallas County, there's Dallas County elections. Basically, your county should have a website that tells you what your sample ballot is going to be like when you put in your information. And the Democratic side, the key elections are Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General. On the Republican side, it's the U.S. Senate and Attorney General. And here's a list of all of the, I think at least, Oh, it's just Dallas County only? Dallas County only positions that have runoffs going on in the primary. And election day, once again, is next Tuesday. That's this coming Tuesday. 26th, 7 to 7. There's also municipal runoffs. The election day is June 13th, early voting June 1st through June 9th. There's 2 in the DART service area, 1 in Farmers Branch for mayor, and 1 in Irving for place 3. So if you live in Farmers Branch or Irving, please go vote. Is there one in Arlington? Yeah. Okay, there's one in Arlington also. Also, I know there's one in Denton for mayor, I think. Okay, so let's go over some RTC stuff. You might have seen newspaper articles about it. So Michael Morris got let go by the COG. RTC really did not like that, and they filed a lawsuit against the COG Executive Board. Michael Morris there was a ruling, and Michael Morris was reinstated. Also, Collin County removed their RTC representative, and this actually points to what CEO David was talking about. It's the suburbs having resentment against Dallas. One of their complaints was that he voted to give DART $75 million to support the GMP plan. After this fight, RTC, they signed a new tri-party MPO agreement, the Metropolitan Planning Organization agreement with TxDOT, and basically it says RTC is the governing body and COG is the fiscal agent that follows those policies that are set. And COG Executive Board has 30 days to sign. If COG does not sign, RTC has the option to shake it up. Honestly, I don't think they want to do it, but they have the option to start getting their own staff to execute their policies and take that ability away from COG. The next COG Executive Board meeting is May 28th, so we should take a close look at that to see what they decide. And I don't know where this came from, but I guess this is when Michael Morris had his triumphant return.
We wanted to do 2 slides and be like, Michael Morris has got fired from the RTC, and then say, oh, let's all welcome the new RTC.
The king is dead, long live the king.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's, okay, I think that's it from everybody.
No secretary, and then we have...
So before we wrap, if you guys want to check the bylaws, so since Connor has resigned, I'm technically acting president for now, according to the bylaws. I'm not aware of anything where we need to have like an interim election, but we'll take a look and we'll have some updates for you next week. But if people are asking, next meeting, but if people are asking like, yeah, where's the date of president, just send it to me. Yeah. Anyways, we're right. Yeah, we're done. Okay, cool. What, is the whole audience need to hear it? What's your question?
No, I don't have a question. I have two things. First of all, I want to publicly thank everybody who helped out in Addison. There's very few people in this group who actually live in Addison, and I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, they were. Go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
The extra assistance. And also, in a separate matter, we really have to thank Tammy. Tammy made the local news for CBS and ABC.
Awesome.
It's your fault, Peter.
Yeah. Yeah, nice work, everybody. All right, we are adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Tyler.
Yes?
What's that? Yeah.